there, Impact Club. Hoping you guys got pizza today. Sorry about that last time. That was pretty bad. But I wanted to get you guys excited about Christmas. I know we're all anticipating Christmas coming, but it's a season that can kind of pull at two strings of our heart. And those two strings are greed or give. And I feel like it's kind of this balance of back and forth, right? There's things that we hope for, are excited about giving those presents, but we're also excited about getting those presents. And we kind of can go back and forth in that like give, get type of situation. So I wanted to share with you two stories today about, first of all, a person who wanted to get, and then a person who wanted to give. And the person who wanted to get comes out of the Bible, God's Word, and I have it right here. I'm going to be reading from it. And this is from the book of Luke, which is one of the Gospels. The Gospels tell us about the birth, life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ and all the ministry and the things he said, the healings he did, the miracles, and who he was when he was here on the earth. This is from Luke chapter 12, and it's called The Parable of the Rich Fool. Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." And Jesus told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop. And by the way, did you catch that? The ground of the rich man. So he was already rich, exactly. So he thought to himself, "Oh, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops, because I already have so many." Then he said, this is what I will do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones. There I will have room to store all my grain and all my goods. So he doesn't just decide, I have enough, I'm going to give the rest away. No, instead, I'll tear down the ones I have because they're too small, and I'll build bigger ones to store even more stuff. And then he says, I'll say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. Did you know that comes from the Bible, by the way? Eat, drink, and be merry. That's kind of a saying that's out there. Well, it comes straight out of Scripture. But this is what that man said to himself. I'll just take it easy. I don't have to work. I'll just sit back and enjoy the good life. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded of you. Then who will you give what you have prepared for only yourself? Who will you give it to? You only ever gave to yourself, God's saying. And so that was a foolish decision that he made. Instead of giving away the extra, the plenty that he had been blessed with so much. He instead chose to take even more for himself. And sometimes we can get caught up in that attitude during this Christmas season, that getting heart. So I want to remind you today to grow instead this month a giving heart. And this is about a man named Saint Nicholas, who was a real man that lived, who was known for the legacy of giving. Saint Nicholas lived in 280 AD. He was born in the town of Myra, which is a seaport village in what is now modern-day Turkey. He was born to a wealthy couple. Again, a rich situation, right? Just like the other guy was. They had prayed a long time for a child, and so when they had Nicholas, they were so grateful. But sadly, his parents died in a plague when he was only 9 years old, and he ended up being raised by his uncle. His uncle believed in Jesus. Quite naturally, though, his uncle told him about Jesus, and so Nicholas grew up then knowing who Jesus was, that he was born, that he lived a real life, that he died and he rose again, and that someday he was going to come again for them. St. Nicholas's life was changed by this. He wasn't a saint at this time, just known as Nicholas, but he heard about a family who was in really big financial problems. And their daughter wanted to get married, and in that time, the daughter had to have a chunk of money. They called it a dowry, that they would give this money to the man that was courting her, that she was going to marry. And she wanted to get married to this man, but did not have a dowry. And things were so bad that the father was actually thinking he might have to sell the daughter instead to be a slave, because they just didn't have any money. So when Nicholas hears about this story, I love this part. He takes a bag of gold in the night so that nobody will know that it's him. And he throws these golden coins, that's what they had, coins made of gold back then. And he throws them in through the window. And back then, this is not made up, guys, this is real stuff. Back then, they would hang their stockings by the fire to dry, for real, like real socks, like because they had to wash them and rewear them, and they were much more green then than we are today. And so they had their socks hanging by the fire, and some of the coins fell in the socks. Does that sound familiar? Well, anyways, so the girl is overjoyed that, she's got this money and she can get married now, and all this bad stuff doesn't have to happen to their family. And so the same thing happens with the other daughters too. He ends up giving them also the money, but he always does it secretly. And people don't know how these girls are getting the dowry and how they're getting this money. But he loved to do it secretly and not have anybody know that he was doing it. These actions that he did lit a fire in his spirit to pay more attention to the poor and to hear more ways that he could give this wealth that he'd inherited from his parents to help those that were suffering and in need around him. And rather than him tearing down his home and building something bigger or using all that wealth for himself, like that story we heard before, he used it instead to impact those around him, which I believe he must have got from learning from his uncle out of the book of Matthew in the Bible in chapter 6. And this is more words that Jesus said when he said, "So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets and tell everybody, hey, look at me, I'm giving to the needy. Oh, I helped the needy this week. I went down to the gospel mission, did all this great stuff." He said, no. Instead, I tell you the truth. When you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be done in secret. And so I just love that St. Nicholas got that he was, left hand not know what the right hand is doing, but do it in such a way that you're not announcing it to the world. He didn't go and give them the money even in the daylight. He did it secretly because he just wanted to bless them for the sake of blessing them. And so that God's love could be spread through his actions, and that it would reflect back on God and the miracle of who Jesus is. And these actions lit such a fire in his life that actually another book in the Bible, in Matthew 25, 35 to 36, this was kind of the motto that St. Nicholas had actually for his life. "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." And he says, anytime you did any of these things for the least of these, Jesus says, it's like you did it for me. Anytime you've given to somebody who was hungry, it's like you did it for Jesus. Anytime you gave clothes to somebody who needed them, it's like you did it for Jesus. And that is really what inspired St. Nicholas's life. He ended up actually employing people that he hired to make clothing specifically that he gave out for the needy. He distributed constantly food to the hungry. He hired a wood carver to make simple wooden toys for the children in his village. And he continued to keep his identity of giving a secret through all of these actions. He even baked exotic breads that he mixed sugar and spices into, and he called it gingerbread, and he gave that out to the town children. He died around 343 AD, and his kind deeds and generosity became known and were quite naturally linked to a variety of gift-giving occasions. And as I'm telling this story, and you're hearing the things about the stockings by the fire, and that he hired somebody to make toys and gingerbreads, and you're probably thinking, Amy, you seriously made up this story. I did not make up this story. Many of the traditions that we have at Christmas are rooted in history, and many of them rooted in St. Nicholas, which is where we get our modern day Santa Claus from. He's changed over time, and things have been added to his story, obviously, with a Santa workshop and a North Pole and flying reindeer and all of that. But a real man did live, and he died December 6th. And if you still look on some of the older calendars, December 6th is St. Nicholas Day. When he died, the church decided to give him the name of saint. Because his life was all about giving and impacting those around him with what he had been given. He used his gifts, he used his wealth, he used his personality, and he did it because he loved the Lord first. And so let his life be a legacy into your life, that your life too would be known as being a giver this season, a giver all year round. Obviously, he didn't just do this at Christmas. It was something that was the foundation of who he was, because he believed in Jesus and he saw the life that Jesus led, which was all about being a servant, right, to those around him, and to the point of death, even death on a cross. He gave it all. He gave it all for us. So we too can be called to give to those around us, to give to those who are needy, to those who are hungry, to those who need a friend, to those who need some kind words, a smile. Let your ears be tuned in this Christmas season to anybody who's suffering and needs something around you. And may you be a part of that solution as you share God's love through this Christmas season, because he loves you so much. Merry Christmas.